Okay, I promised somebody today that I would post a video and tell a story that I've told over the years. This is a true story. To the best of my knowledge, it's completely true as I tell it. And I can't remember the exact date. I would say that this event that I'm going to recount to you occurred in the summer, June or July I would suspect, maybe late May, but probably June or July. Could be even around the 4th of July, because it occurred during a period of time when I know my oldest daughter was not in school. She was out for the summer. And so it's a sad story, but it's one of those sad stories that when you hear it, you almost can't help from laughing. It's so sad it's funny. And it's what I call the train story, okay? So, people to say, oh, that can't be true. And to be honest with you, I'm recounting the information I got from a person that was there on the site that was supposed to have the information, and I assume that he was telling the truth. He got it from some other people at the site, at the scene of this incident, and so we were on the scene. But if you've never ridden a train, this occurred. I was riding the Amtrak train from New Orleans to Dyersburg, Tennessee, which goes on to Chicago, by the way. And if you've never ridden a train, some of this, I want to explain some things. What they do when you get on the train, it originates there in New Orleans. And when you get on the train there, going to Chicago or going to St. Louis or wherever you're stopping, the train stops numerous times through northern Louisiana, at Hammond, Louisiana, I believe, and several times through Mississippi. Most of the stops, I don't remember about Jackson, but most of the stops are just almost not even stopped. The train barely gets stopped before it starts again. And so most of those stops are really quick. The train leaves New Orleans, and so it leaves about 4:30. And so what my wife and I had been in a habit for a couple years doing is I worked for Texaco Oil at the time that this event occurred in New Orleans in a high-rise downtown. And so she went home in the summer for a couple weeks to stay with her parents in Dyer County, New Bern, Tennessee. And so this was back before cell phones and all the conveniences we have now. But anyway, she went home, and I would ride the train up and then spend a week of my vacation there with her family and visiting my family and friends in Tennessee. And then we would all drive back to New Orleans or to Slidell, Louisiana, where we live just north of New Orleans. So anyway, so one Friday afternoon, after she had been gone a while, I walked down and carried my bag and walked down to the train station and got on the Amtrak after work about 4 to 4:30, 4:45, somewhere around that time. We were supposed to pull into Dyersburg, I believe, Dyersburg about 1 or 1:30 a.m. in the morning. A Memphis stop was about 12, and I think we stayed there for 20. They had a scheduled stop, and we stayed there for a while. I had ridden a train several times before, but as we went through, uneventful trip, and if you don't know, as they go through Mississippi, what they do is when you get on the train, they put you in a car according to where you're going to get off. So there's usually a lot of people going to Chicago, so they might have the 2 car or a full car load for that, so they know where those people are. And then they put some people for St. Louis, because they have quite a few there. And then they take a car and they put all those little stops through Mississippi and Tennessee. It stops at Dyersburg and Fulton and Memphis. And so the smaller stops, they put those people together so they can find them easily and get them off. And when you get ready when they're approaching that town, the conductor comes through the car and gets you standing by the door. That train stops at that little station, sometimes not even a building there, stops, sets down a little step for you to step out on, helps you off the train, helps you get your bag, maybe throws your bag off, and then that train, he gets back on with that stool and hollers at that engineer on that walkie-talkie, and man, they're gone, okay? It's just a quick stop. So, uneventful trip. I'd go to the dining car and have a drink or something, but I didn't spend much time in the dining car because it was smoking, and I'm a non-smoker, and I didn't like to sit in the car then and have to breathe secondhand smoke, so I spent most of my time reading or relaxing or sleeping or working on some paperwork that I had with me. And so there were two young ladies sitting behind me, quite a bit younger, I'd say in their 20s, and I was still in my 30s or early 40s at the time. And I talked to them, and they were getting off at Grenada, Mississippi. And so he called out to stop, got the two young ladies off, got them back by the door, and we began to slow down, and we came almost to a stop. And the train kind of stopped quickly, and we sat there for a few minutes, and I looked out. I was sitting on the right side facing, you know, the engine. And I looked out, and I didn't see any kind of station. And I kind of looked out to the left. It was dark. It was about 10:30 on a Friday night. And so I looked to the left. I didn't see anything. Well, here in a few minutes or so, a minute or so, under a minute, not very long, the conductor brought those two young ladies back and put them in the seat. They were sitting directly behind me, and they were conversing in an excited manner. You could tell by their conversation. And I turned around and said, "What's going on?" And they said, "Oh, you won't believe it." She said, "We were listening to the radio," and she said, all of a sudden, the engineer comes over the radio and goes, "Oh, hell, I just ran over two people." And they were like, you know, so we sat there. You know, time went by. The conductor came by a couple times, and he stopped and talked to the three of us. And sometime during that time, after an hour or so, he told us his story that he'd gotten from the front of the train, I suppose. I mean, I have to take him at his word. I don't think he was making stuff up. But he told us that apparently there were two people having sex on the railroad track, and that the engineer was blowing the whistle, came upon them suddenly there. We were just out of the city of Grenada, Mississippi, blew the whistle. The boy jumps up startled, sees the train. Apparently the engineer saw the look of terror in his face, and then they hit him. And apparently the words he used was that the air blast blew the boy back off the tracks, killed the girl, ran over her, and it was terminal. And so, of course, the train doesn't stop in an instant. He was stopping anyway, but he stopped as quick as he could. He had slowed down a good bit for that station there at Grenada, Mississippi. And so we sat there from about 10:30. We were supposed to be in Memphis, like I said, around midnight, 12:30, and Dyersburg, 1:30, and my family was waiting for me. The train station was in an area where there was nothing around in Dyersburg, so it wasn't like I could walk somewhere and call. There wasn't really much of a depot there, you know, being this was probably 1990, 91, 92, somewhere in that time frame. Anyway, so apparently they had to get the coroner out. They had to get the ambulance out. The boy was not killed. He was just apparently beat up really bad, and according to the conductor, and that they had found a bottle of whiskey, partially drank bottle of whiskey on the scene, and they suspected that they were drunk. Probably, you know, could have been other things in drug induced. I don't know, but anyway. It apparently killed the woman, you know, beat up the guy. He seemed to be all right, is what they told us. But it took many hours to get the coroner, get the sheriff, and all the investigation, all the things that are done. And it's not really uncommon. A lot of places, there's a lot of people run over by a train. If you don't live close to a train tracks, you may not be aware of that. But I think it's fairly common, especially out west, cars getting hit where there's a lot of crossings and very little, you know, crossing guards and stuff like that, and it's wide open country and the trains are moving fast. But anyway, apparently these people were having sexual relations on the train. I guess I have actually this year, because people say, oh, that can't be true, and I called the newspaper in Grenada and talked to one of the old timers there, the oldest timer I could get a hold of, and he said, well, the guy that would probably know is retired. He said, I'll try to get in touch with him and see what he says. He said, I think I remember somebody being run over by the train. So all I have is that story that I have, you know, from them. And I guess the moral of that story is definitely don't have sex on the railroad track. Well, I hope you enjoyed my train story, and I'll have others for you. As unfortunately my life has been sort of eventful in the proclivity to find and get into those kind of situations. So you have a good evening.